people online. I apologize. Yeah, tell me about it. Hey guys, if anyone's online, I apologize. It was just reinstalled, and this is the terrible part. My dumb ass thought it was broadcasting, but it wasn't. We just did introductions. We're talking about sunlight now, so bear with me. I apologize once again for anyone who missed it, and I'll revisit some of it in the beginning. I'll try to cover it, but we didn't cover too much. Sarah's a model, so guys, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and do it quick. Talk a little bit about it online. Sarah's our model, so that's what you guys see up in front there now. We talked about what we're covering in class, which you guys will see on the meetup.com page. And once again, we're within the first slide, and we're talking about dynamic range, and we're talking about working with the sun right now. And so we're emulating the sun being directly above the subject and working in the shade. You guys will see the PowerPoint in just a little bit. All right, so here's the sun. I mean, here's pretty much daylight sun. And so this is not fully shaded here. But imagine if I bring you to a gazebo or underneath something, when you shade above the person's head, it's going to lower the intensity of the light, but you still have the same light source. That's still the sun over there. But instead of these harsh shadows, look that way. You see the harsh shadows on her face. If you bring under a gazebo, shade, or tree, you can go ahead and shoot the shade. And the problem is your background is also lit. So we'll go ahead and pretend that this is we'll really cover it so the sun looks like it's shooting everywhere here. So we have the sun here, it's creating a harsh shadow, and then it's really lit behind her. So we'll pretend that that's going on. All right, so if you put her in shade, look at that. If you put her in shade, her light levels will even out on her face, but the background's still really bright, right, guys? So one of the ways you can quickly shoot outside is, notice that I have a foam core board here that I bought for $5. We'll talk about tools a little bit later. We'll go ahead and put her in front of, well, we'll turn this one off. We'll pretend we're putting her in front of a wall, the sun's over there, and it's coming down here, and then the wall's in the shade, right? So she's standing in front of the wall, but the sun is on her. If you take a device like a foam cord and you hold it above your subject, it balances her lighting with the background lighting. And so you can actually stand a subject completely in the sun, blocking. So you take a picture of them, but also have the background in, which is in shade. Or what you can do is try to find a location that's completely in the shade and shoot there. The only issue there is with the sun and how large it is. There's going to be spots of light around, and so that's how you want to deal with it. And so shooting in the shade is one of the best ways to shoot outside at any time, mostly outdoors. So go ahead and jump back to full screen. All right. So find shade on the side of the building. Something that's really useful there, guys, is if the sun's over there and it's coming over a building and the sun's over here, you can always stick your subject within the shade and put it by the wall and shoot it within there. The cool thing too is, we'll cover this a little bit later, when they start looking at the light shows in their eyes, but it's not illuminating their whole face. So one of those things that you want to scout for when you're shooting outside is nice areas of shade. And so that's why it's really popular to shoot in woods and so on and get that done. All right, you can create your own shade by blocking the sun from hitting your subject. It's pretty simple there. Something I want to, and I keep on telling people this, is when you take this picture, you take a picture of her. You don't take a picture of me holding a board over her head. Use whatever tools you need to get your shot. And so no one knows what you did to get this. This is a $5 board that was an emergency purchase in your mind. If you had to, if you were quickly doing a purchase of someone, this is a $5 purchase from CVS. It's worth every penny because it blocks the sun, it also reflects the sun. You guys see that happening there? So that's, this is a no-brainer. I mean, obviously you guys probably want to buy your own reflector. That's a little bit better to have, but if in the case of an emergency, these work. So it's just one of those things where you pick it up. All right, so we'll discuss more about this, about blocking the sun and so on, in just a little bit. All right, so guys, understanding dynamic range, and this is important. All right, so dynamic range is the difference between the darkest and lightest areas of a scene. If you guys look at her, the darkest parts is, it's measured in stops. So the difference between the darkest areas and the brightest areas, it can range every time, it can vary. Every time it's twice as bright, that's considered a stop. And so in this situation right here, I'm going to take a rough guess. I think it would probably be about 8 stops, 9, whatever. It's not really that much. But you guys have all seen it. This is dynamic range. You're in a basement. You're working down there. The lights are dim. Someone opens the door, and it's really bright out there. Your eyes have to adjust. And that's your eyes adjusting for the dynamic range of the situation. Well, your camera captures 25% of what you see. At best, it captures 40% of what you see. And so has anyone here ever taken a picture of somebody with the clouds behind them and the sky perfectly exposed? Has anyone ever seen that? That's dynamic range. That's the dynamic range issue. This picture of Christian here, there is no detail in the sky because it can't capture that detail because I'm asking it to capture the detail that's in Christian right there. And so understanding dynamic range is extremely important. If you guys use an iPhone, extremely capable camera on the phone, but it covers about 4 stops of range. It has really no range at all. And so if you've ever taken, if you've gone to Hellman and Finch and taken a picture of a hamburger right by a window, I can promise you it's probably going to look good because your dynamic range is really small. When it's a large light source by the window and it's coming from the side, you have about maybe 3 to 4 stops of range difference. Well, your phone all of a sudden looks like a professional camera. If you take the same shot with your camera, it looks pretty much the same. Well, all of a sudden you add another light in, or you add or you put it in a situation where the light source is dramatically different. Well, your camera quickly goes, or your iPhone quickly goes downhill. Is there any crop camera users in here? A 70D, stuff like that. Well, crop cameras have a slightly smaller sensor, and so their dynamic range isn't as strong as a full frame camera, though it's not necessarily bad. It's exponentially higher than your cell phone and your little point-and-shoot cameras, so it's good. But bigger sensors do capture more dynamic range. The really expensive medium format cameras and bigger, they capture about 19, 18 stops, but still humans see about 25. So these $50,000 cameras, these $70,000 cameras, still don't capture the same details that we see. And so why it's relevant to you is you want to know that your camera cannot capture what you're seeing. And so if you're using your camera, does anyone ever use their meter on their camera? You'll read books that say your meter should be on 0. That's if you want your camera to always decide what the exposure is. As you get used to it, you'll notice that your meter might be at -2. It might be at +1, and that's what you consider a perfect shot. And so for anyone who's wondering what makes you more of not a professional photographer, but more of an experienced model photographer, it's when you don't give a shit what your camera says, and you're just going on what you want. And so the camera's there to tell you stuff, but it doesn't know exactly what you want. The reason why I also want to mention that, guys, is when your camera meters, depending on your metering mode, it's either looking at the whole scene or it's looking at the middle or so on. Your camera does not know what's a person, what's your subject, what's a thing, what's a mount, or anything. It just knows the scene in front of it. In the end, you have to decide what you want exposed correctly, which I believe leads to the next one. Sir, question?
Post-processing, very required.
Well, post-processing in itself, ideally, if anyone's a few of you guys have shot with me, post-processing, I used to do a lot of post-processing, but I half-ass it now. And so I try to expose it correctly. I will actually just shoot a couple frames until I say, this is what I want, and just do that. Concerning post-processing though, actually, what's the actual question? Like how much do you do, or?
Yeah, I mean, the question is if you spend all the time meticulously preparing, or I'm a novice, so you start out and do it and rely on post-processing to adjust it to the way you think.
Right. Here's the only advice I'll give to that. All right, so it's all about efficiency for me. To get to 85%, which most people consider a pass, most of your clientele loves, to get to 85% requires about 10 minutes of work, ideally 10 to 5 minutes. Post-processing is extra time to get that last 15%. The only people who will notice the last 15%, you, me, and the other photographers here, who aren't your clients. And so if you spend 4 hours on post-processing, it's not a bad thing, but that's only things that we would notice and we would applaud you for, but more than likely your clients will not notice the difference. And I hate saying that, guys, but some of you guys may agree, some of you guys may not. But has anyone here ever spent 4 hours post-processing something, and the only people who comment on it are your fellow photographers, who aren't really the people you want to, like, there's really no need for me to make you guys happy or you to make me happy in the long run if we want to take pictures of people. And so the people there, and so to answer your question, do I post-process? Yes. One of the things that I've post-processed for so long that what took me hours before now takes me minutes. And so I do. It's not I don't post-process at all, but it's so negligible how much I do that I don't even notice it. My main thing is more of the photography side and getting it right. And that's through lighting and just actually, I'll go to be honest here, someone can challenge me on this, challenge me to shoot JPEGs, and I'll do it. I'll shoot a wedding JPEG if it's fun. And so, would I know? I mean, don't challenge me on that one, guys, because someone paid me for it. But if someone hires me for a wedding, guys, and you guys want me to second shoot for you, I'll shoot JPEGs if you want me to. I wouldn't suggest that either. But the processing, to answer your question, I try not to process that much. I try to just get it done right.
So if you do want to have a stop or two of latitude, you shoot raw, right?
A stop or two, yes. Raw allows more latitude, but what I want to go ahead and say with this on that one, for those who don't know, your camera shoots raw in JPEG. Raw files are not processed in any ways, and so when you do JPEG on your camera, and this is actually the funny part. Canon, Fuji, and Sony are known to be the better processors. Nikon sucked for a while, but they're getting better. There's a little algorithm that there's an algorithm that applies to your raw files that when it creates a JPEG, it does a little contrast, it does a little saturation, it does a little sharpness. So raw files, I do edit raw files, but raw files are insurance. I actually prefer just using the JPEGs. Because a lot of times I find the processing for JPEGs kind of what I want. Because the weird part is, any Lightroom users here, Canon has what's called picture styles, and Nikon has picture controls. And I haven't found the right way to emulate in Lightroom picture styles that Canon has incorporated. I know you can do extra steps, but I haven't really paid attention to it. But I actually prefer how it looks straight off camera, which is really weird. But you're right there. For those who don't know, the difference between RAWs and JPEGs, and let me go ahead and explain this, is when you have a RAW file, if you have green, or if you have yellow or blue, do you guys see yellow or blue in this scene at all? No. But you still have the data there. It's there and it's sitting on the side, and if you try to adjust anything, if there is any blue in there, you'll be able to do it. In JPEG, since you're trying to save space in its compression algorithm, it'll say this color doesn't exist, cut it off. That's gristle we don't need. You know, this side doesn't exist. Oh, this red is close to this red, let's combine them together. So that's what JPEGs do to go ahead and compress size. You guys may have noticed, has anyone ever saved a JPEG of a really colorful scene, and all of a sudden it's like 7 megs, and then you save like a black and white and it's like 1 meg? Because when there's a huge color difference, the JPEG will not sacrifice as much color or sacrifice as much data. So in this case, it'll go ahead and throw that away, and where that's relevant is all of a sudden if you want to recover data and it's not there, your camera or your JPEG file doesn't know what to do. In RAW files, it's going to go ahead and start recovering, even though it's not there. Luke?
Yeah, I got a question on dynamic range.
Yeah.
My camera's got dynamic range optimization. Does that work or impact the shot when you're shooting raw?
I'm trying to remember, is it Nikon or Canon?
Sony.
Sony. The dynamic range optimization, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. on Canon, all I remember about it is it stopped you from using ISO 100, which is really weird. And I think actually, someone correct me. I think it's actually just it looks at the highlights and tries to unclip the highlights.
Well, see, what happened was the setup you had over here last week, I was blown out at F22. I couldn't. I mean, I was doing everything I can.
Right.
And I went to a forum, I think like an EP review, and I'm like, my camera busted? And they asked, I said, do you have your PRO on? And maybe I always have it on. And they suggested that might be what was causing.
Right.
You know.
I don't know on a software algorithm side if it does anything. It's one of those things I have to research again. For Canon, I remember when the 40D came out, for dynamic range optimization, what it did was if anything was clipping really bad, it would actually change your settings so it doesn't clip as much on white. But it was like it didn't enhance the sensor. It just put safety stops up there to prevent you
I was wondering if it was doing something opposite. So I was overexposed by this stop on everything.
Yeah, I gotta look at it. It's one of those. I gotta mostly go on the Sony ones because Sony tends to be pretty good about that. All right, guys. So helpful tricks. Working in harsh sunlight can create contrasty shadows. Put some sunglasses on your subject. I don't have sunglasses here. Can you pretend you're looking at the light? Close your eyes. All right, guys. One of the main things that people don't like about working outside, look towards us, is the sunlight is really harsh. So one of the things that you can immediately do is if you're more going for a fashiony type look, is if you put sunglasses on your subject and have them look towards the light, it's about how the sun or the light fills their face. So look back up that way. You guys will notice now that there's an edge shadow over here, but it's not dominating. This shadow isn't dominating her face on that side. So let me go ahead and now it won't show as well on the screen, unfortunately. So essentially, one of the tricks that you can do when you're shooting out there is have your subject look towards the light source. This works on a day that's not really sunny either. This works on a day that's really cloudy. Because when you have them look towards the light source, it is a broad light on their face, but it illuminates their face. And then if anyone's ever taken one of my lighting classes, this is one of the first things I say. If you don't know what you want to do with your model, or if it's a newer model, have them look towards the light. Because that's when it fills out, and then you can have them look elsewhere. Look up towards the light. So I like that, and now look slowly towards here. And as she moves, I see where the shadow is. And so I start with her face fully lit, and then I control that as a photographer. So one of the first steps I say is look towards the light. So having your subject look towards the light source is super helpful. So remember that. With sunglasses on, they can close their eyes. The sunglasses, will prevent you from seeing their eyes. You can give them a 3 count. Hey, open your eyes on the count of 3. They can look up, and you can get a shot there. But it's really nice, fashioning look, and you guys may have seen it a lot in sort of like, your European fashion magazines, where guys are just walking around with 50mm lenses, and they're using what light that's available. Well, that sunlight, that harsh sunlight, is actually roughly around 3 o'clock our time. They're a higher latitude than us. I believe, Italy's around the same latitude as us. I don't remember. Paris is the same latitude as New York. That's right. So with the, with the sun, if it's directly above, you don't really want a model looking straight up. But around 3 or 4 o'clock in harsh sunlight, you could work outside. And the cool part about this is where I want you guys to kind of have an open mind about it, is when the sun's hitting Sarah up here, it's also illuminating the background. It's at the same angle where it's illuminating the background. And so you're getting proper exposure on your subject and the background. And so when you shoot with someone with sunglasses on and they're looking at the sun, all of a sudden the background's lit the same way too, which you guys saw in this picture of Savannah up here. Do you guys see that right there? The background's lit the same way. It's harsh sunlight, so you see a really well-defined shadow on her, but that's also sunglasses on your subject, and your subject looking towards the sun. The shadows are over here, so the sun isn't directly right at her face, but this is shooting in harsh sunlight and working with it. So the benefit there is you illuminate the background, you illuminate your subject. All right. And if you guys see any photos up there and you want to ask any questions about it, they're all photos of shooting outside. I'll answer them and I'll break it down for you. All right, so if you place your subject in the shade to avoid direct sunlight, have them look towards the bright lit area to have great catch lights in their eyes. So that's what's done with this one over here. This picture, we were at Salt in downtown Roswell, Madison and I, and there's a little overhang over us, and she's sitting down. Well, on my left-hand side, because I'm across away from her, is the open street, and it's there. It's fully daylight out there. So instead of having her look towards here, which is more wall, if you have her look towards where the light is, it reflects in the eyes. It's also.
So just natural lighting, you can that.
Yep, that's natural lighting right there. And so because it's indirect light, the sun's hitting the street. It's actually a soft light source. It's a large light source bouncing off the ground. So the thing is, though, is I have her looking towards me or towards the light source, so it's picking up. Fortunately, we were on a corner, so right behind me was a lot of light too. So it was an ideal location, but it's one of those things where you pay attention to it. And because the problem is, guys, when you block a light source, look towards that. If you block a light source, and I'll try to block it here, your eyes dull a little bit. And so, but what we can do is I would love the ability to move the sun. So I need you to manage this, Jamie. So, but PowerPoint 2013 is a little bit funky, so you need alt tab. Have a lot.
You what?
Can you put it on the?
On camera?
Is it not plugged in? Oh, it's not plugged in.
Oh, it was plugged in. Just kind of fun.
Actually, I'll plug it in.
Okay. She does all of that.
Right? All right, so guys, we'll imagine that this is a reflection coming out. The sun's still over here. Stand up. So we're blocking the sun. Look towards this way. You guys notice the light reflecting in our eyes there? That's emulating that. That's sitting your subject in an area where you're shading them. Look towards there. And the light's reflecting in their eyes. So ideally where you guys can do this is if you ever see a white wall, and a white wall outside, and it's a lot of light is hitting it, that's a great light source. That is a great way to get catch lights in the eyes, where you block the sun or you sit in the shade. So we block this harsh light going onto her. But we have this beautiful light reflecting there, but also reflecting in her eyes. Because the problem is, as soon as, let's see if we block it, you guys see how her eyes dull just a little bit and stuff like that? Or we turn it off. There's no light there, and we just look towards them. And so we have a little bit of reflection in the ground. Fortunately, we have white painted grounds here. But if it's sort of dull or if it's dark in color, it's not going to reflect as well. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. Let's see here.
Did you use any reflector on the bottom? Did you use any reflector?
On the bottom? No, that was just a normal street. So, and I'll let it go. Here you go, buddy. It was his birthday yesterday.
Oh,
so we got the card. For those who didn't sign
man,
it,
that's
sign it
awesome.
later, anyways,
Awesome.
happy birthday.
Oh, thank you all.
So guys, if you place yourself, you can say, look direct sunlight, have to look towards the bright lit area. Does that make sense to him? And so when they're sitting in the shade, one of the coolest things that you can do is put a person by a wall, like go ahead and nail against the wall. Imagine the sun's coming from behind the wall, and so they're there, but it's really lit behind you. Well, that's a great shot because you expose for your subject, and when they're looking at you, it's pure brightness in their eyes, and it works really well. Or something else that works really well is stand over here. If the sun is behind them, and look towards this way. So I'm turn it out. Her eyes are completely lit with the lights hitting behind the wall, becoming a large light source and bouncing back to the subject. So what never hurts, guys, is this seems weird doing this, but go ahead and we'll emulate it this way. Stand right here. If you buy one of these yourself, go ahead and hold it right there. And can you guys see how much that adds in? You'll see her eyes, stuff like that. If you buy one of these and put it directly on top of your camera, that's a catch light there. So look, actually we'll go ahead and look towards them. Sorry this is directly in your guys' eyes, but stand right here. And so you guys look at her eyes and so on. But now we're going to put this here. You guys see that sparkle that comes in? This is a $5 addition you just buy to quickly shoot outside, and you hold it like this. You can hold it yourself. So that's why this is kind of it's sturdier than a reflector sometimes. So this is almost a no-brainer just to get one of these all the time. So let's go ahead and get back to the PowerPoint. All right, we're on the PowerPoint. All right, so guys. All right, so, no, you still got to control it for a bit, boy. All right, so next slide, and I hope online is going okay. So, we had a half hour where I feel bad because we just installed it. So. All right, guys, if the sun is really harsh, we just cover this. Put it behind your subject and expose for your subject. One of the first things I do is look for a person's shadow. This is a really neat trick. One of those obvious things also. All right, here's the sun, guys. Sun's been pretty good to us. It's been working really well. We'll turn off the other sun, like we're on task speed or something here. And, one of the first things I do, if I can have you stand here, is before I even shoot, I look at the subject's shadows. I don't look at the subject, and I see where the shadow is projected. If I'm over here, that means the shadow is going to be on this side of her face, because that shadow is going this way. If I want her face perfectly in shade, I go to about right here, turn towards me, and right there's a little bit of a reflection coming off that wall, so it's a bad example here, but right here is where I get the optimum amount of her face in her shadows. And because of that, I can start shooting exposed to her, and there is no harsh shadow lines on her. That's how you get the sun directly behind your subject. I know it's weird saying that, but you don't look at your subject, look exactly where their shadow is casting, and go from there. It's actually something useful you can tell your subject too, where, hey, Trent, where should I point? Where should I look? Look directly at where your shadow is pointing. So that's where they turn. And so, question or?
We would want to get to this. I really like texture shots looking at her now. Collarbone and other things getting out of the neck, which is a good suggestion on soft lighting and stuff.
Well, texture and detail comes when you break about 40 degrees lighting-wise, about 40 to 90 degrees. As you go ahead and start turning this way. As you do more and more that way, it becomes flat light, and as you go further and further away, when you're about 45 degrees to 90 degrees to your subject or even more, that's when you get really nice shadow detail. And so what you can do is if you like the detail there, but you want even lighting, remember a person isn't uniform in how they move. You can have one portion move a certain way and another portion move a certain way, so you can get details in various other spots while keeping the face in shadow and stuff like that. But you guys see where the shadow, where you can have her point towards wherever you are. So that works well, so face towards me. And that's where we did that trick where the sun's behind her, exposing. The problem about shooting outside now with the sun behind them is there's a huge level of difference dynamic range-wise. And so if I put this up, it looks really cool. You guys see that difference there. It's really amazing, but the background is still really dark. And so what you're going to risk is either the sun being really bright or the background not really being illuminated. But what I want to go ahead and note here is, sorry, actually let me cover this first. When you do this, your subject faces in the shade, and you don't have to worry about shadows. Just be sure to try to have some catch light in their eyes. So, go ahead. It sounds silly, but she laid her head sideways. Right here.
You've done worse.
No, it's true. It's true.
You're not saying always shoot in the shadow. Just say to.
Well, I'm saying you can shoot in a lot of different places. Don't listen to this as a you always have to shoot like
But
this.
you're not. You're just saying that's the best place not to get the harsh.
Like if you want to control, if you're only using the sun, if that's what you have available, let's say you don't have a flash. One of the things commonly on the internet is don't shoot at a certain time. I don't think that's realistic. I think once you know how to control the light, or the nature of how it works, then it's easier. The two things that are important here is one, the shadow, position of the shadow, where your subject is. And two, it's on another slide. This is what you guys always want to remember. You're taking a picture, guys. It's a portrait, right? What's the most important thing in a portrait? The subject. Expose for your subject. Your camera will lie to you. Your camera will say to get 0, to get everything lit, your subject's going to be underexposed. That's the last thing you want. The most important thing in a portrait is your subject. Always expose for your subject. Tell what your camera says. So that's the most important thing there. Wherever you're wanting to shoot, just make sure your subject's exposed correctly. And so in this case, your subject is going to be backlit. So lay your head down and look towards that.
And then on the block?
Yeah, let's try this place.
On the chopping block?
Put your arms up there.
My arms up like I'm laying down to take a nap?
Yeah, like your woe is me, my fiance didn't bring me ice cream.
Better. If you rock with me. Huh?
At cookies. And so, guys, it looks dark, and it is dark. But ideally, what you're doing is you're exposing for the subject. And so, your camera will say your settings are going to get the background, and you don't want that. You want the subject in, and so that's what you want to expose to. And so that might mean ISO 400 during broad daylight, or so on. And it might mean it gets blown out. But that's where you introduce something like this. You guys see how cool that looks? Just a little whiteboard, and it reflects it. It's good fence. And then, and that is a quick solution on how to shoot outside with the sun directly behind your subject. And look towards this. And that creates a little bit of a catch light in their eyes. So it's a quick solution on shooting outside, very simple. I'm sorry about the sun being direct, or the light being directly in your guys' eyes, but if you notice, it's nice even lighting over here. That's what you're going to get. And then you bounce in the fill, and you get that same even lighting during a harsh sunlit situation. And so that's one trick to shoot outside. Go stand straight up. Same thing. So this time the subject's standing up rather than. So we do the same thing. We put this there and look towards them. So that looks good. Go ahead and put your elbows here and look towards them. Same thing. So backlit subject with a quick bounce card. And you can bounce this way, you can bounce that way, just in case you want, you want details a certain way. But for a quick generic type look, which isn't a bad thing, this is how you bounce or throw a little bit of light back to your subject and shoot outside during a backlit situation. And the property of light that's on your subject's face is instead of being a harsh light, which would have looked something, this is actually not that small a light source. But it looks really bright and harsh. It may not be what you want. You just have the subject turn around and use a reflector. And you go there, or if you have a fill flash, you can use a fill flash too. All right, so are we broadcasting online? Right, perfect. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's go back to PowerPoint, and then I'll turn this. Look awesome. You guys online, I really do feel bad about it earlier. Once again, you really didn't miss much, but if we did, we'll talk about it. So feel free to send me any questions. All right, some more useful tools, guys. A reflector is your best friend. You guys saw what a reflector does. Outside, if you have someone to help you, that's the main thing. You're dealing with outside, which means you're dealing with the elements. So if you don't have anyone helping you, a reflector can be a pretty evil thing. And so try it if you can. Try to bring a sandbag or so on. But a reflector could reflect light or block sunlight. That's the main thing that I want you guys to be aware of. It's not only just reflecting light onto your subject. So here's the sun. Most people see this. You see the sunlight on the subject, and they reflect light in. But also, what you can do is now you can block light. So that's extremely important there. You want to block light because one of the questions, I forgot who asked me or who wanted me to bring this up, is if you're under a tree and there's speckled light, well, you want to block that light, because you don't want speckled light unless you know how to control it. So you just go to your subject and you hold it. Something that's really cool is if it's a headshot, just with one hand, so hold it there. Nothing stops you from doing that unless you don't want them. So you might want someone there, but having a film core board and having your subject hold it is not a bad thing. Mostly if you tell them, hey, can you block the light from hitting you? Hey, can you hold it over here? Because if your subject's holding it, once again, all you should be doing is taking a picture of her face. You shouldn't be taking a picture of her doing this unless you want to give it to her later. So no one's going to notice that. So let's hold this here, block it, and then we'll pretend the sun moves this way. So there you go. So something like that. So you're blocking the sun with a reflector or you're reflecting light. Something that's really neat is you can, instead of just buying a flat board like that, you can also buy a trifold board. And you can actually start contouring the light to how you want. So in a way, Luke, can you hand me that silver thingy over there? John Diaz, who's one of the partners here, went ahead and made this, which you can buy some of these. I think, I forgot who just released one of these. A company just released a mass-produced one of these for like $325. So I don't think it's worth it, in my opinion. But if you hold that and hold it in and look towards, and so you can hopefully see a catchlight in her eyes. So, it's hard to say, but it's kind of like one of those suntan things.
I'm kind of thinking one of the things was Shakespeare.
Yeah. No, those work perfectly fine. What I'll go ahead and say here, guys, just so you don't know, for any new photographers, if you buy it for something else, as soon as it becomes a photography thing, there's about a 540% premium that's instantly added. And so, yeah, like I keep on pushing this foam core board because it is pretty much close to a lot of what it is. You guys notice this little black thing over here? There's something called California Sunbounce, which is like $150, $200, $400. You can buy PVC pipes and ripstop nylon from Joann's and build your own for 45 bucks at most, or for a big one, or you can just spend $20. And so down the line, is it nice to have those? Yes. You'll never see sort of makeshift stuff at Meet Shoot because we want you guys to see how it looks. But if you're at your own studio, don't worry about buying that $320 one. It's really not worth it in my mind. Like with this one, with John making it, this probably cost him at most 40 bucks. And it's doing the same thing that that $320 one does. So, all right, guys. So, next one down is using your surroundings and also as a reflector can work. Does anyone here have a nice driveway at home? Nice, white driveway, so on? There's nothing wrong. You can sit down and hang out. With the sun coming down, you can see it, it won't show with your eyes. If you guys will notice in her eyes, it's actually reflecting a lot of light from the ground. And so it gets hot. It gets uncomfortable, but fortunately the weather is getting a little bit better. And so come late fall or early winter, this is actually even more ideal. If you're taking quick headshots, there's nothing wrong about getting a film core board with your subject, and if you can lay down. Using just sunlight, lay on this. You guys can also get, there's like these little 4x8 boards over there. They're $16 particle boards.
Like
a little back. And then look towards the ground.
Yeah.
So, and essentially, the light comes from the floor, hits her eyes, it's a little bit low, but you're using your surroundings as a reflector. And so something that works really well is you guys may notice Elizabeth's eyes. A lot of you guys know Elizabeth, she has great eyes. But this was during that time where it snowed. I forget how much it snowed, but we were, snowpocalypse or whatever it was a few months ago. It's hard to believe it was only about 6 months ago, right? 7 months ago. So there's just snow all around, and it's reflecting light everywhere. And so it's one of those things. One of the cool places that you can do headshots at, which might surprise you guys, is a skate park. It's all white asphalt, and it's all well paved, and it's all smooth. And so if you go to a skate park and do a quick headshot close to somebody, it's reflective surfaces everywhere. And so you just go there and you just do this quick headshot, and it works great. Heck, if you even put a fake background behind them, it looks amazing because there's light coming from everywhere. Or if you wanted to, you just get 2 of these and you build a little box. Or you have 4 of these and you build a little box. But actually look that way. See the sparkle in Jamie's eyes right now. So it works with light reflecting off the floor there. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so other useful tools, guys. Using an ND filter on your lens allows you to prevent light from getting in. Patrick, do you have yours? I didn't bring mine. Does anyone have an ND filter? Yeah, I'll explain to you guys if anyone wants to see it. We'll bring some in later. Essentially, what an ND filter is, it's a darker piece of glass that prevents light from going in. Where this is relevant to you guys is all of a sudden, if you're using a crop camera, your shutter speed tends to cap out. Oh, is this one? Perfect. Your shutter speed tends to cap out at 1/4000th of a second if you have like a Rebel or so on. Well, if you want to shoot with a prime outside and you want to shoot 1.4, there's too much light. So an ND filter, what you guys will see here is a darker piece of glass. And this is a variable ND, so as I circle this around, it gets darker and lighter. The cool part about this is it allows you to really use slower shutter speeds with the faster aperture. If anyone here likes shooting pictures of waterfalls, this is how you shoot f8 at like 30 seconds in full daylight. You get one of these, and you get a really dark ND filter, and you put it on, and it goes from there. Where this is relevant to you as a photographer doing portraiture out there is you want to shoot 1.4. You want to shoot a fast you want to shoot a fast aperture, but your camera's not letting you go to a sub 1/4000th of a second or anything like that. You use this. Or if anyone's using flashes out there and they don't want to use, or you're using a system that doesn't do high-speed sync, this will let you shoot 2.0 at lower than your sync speed. If this is more advanced than anyone understand, we'll explain it. But when you use a flash outside, if you don't use your company's flash or you don't use a high-speed sync system, you're limited to 1/200th of a second or slower. Well, if you're trying to shoot 2.0 outside, you're getting numbers like 1/2000th of a second, 1/4000th. So by using one of these, you drop your shutter speed to 1/200th. So now you can use a flash outside along with using your fast aperture lens. Here's the thing that surprises most people. Is this a Hoya one? You can buy a Polaroid one for 30 bucks. And so a variable ND, and it comes in the thread size. If you don't know the thread size of your lens, open your lens cap. The back of your lens cap will tell you what your thread size is. It rotates, and so it's really like you guess it. Like my hero of cooking was Justin Wilson, and there was never a precise number for Justin Wilson. He was like, yeah. So that's pretty much. It's like that looks good. And so if you want the numbers to tell you, you look at the histogram. You go ahead and take a shot, and you say, okay, that's right. Or if it's not right, you adjust it a little bit more. So that's one of those things where it's not it's hand grenade. It's not it's not precise numbers. All right, so another filter that's really good, guys, is a polarizer filter. It helps minimize reflections. As you use a polarizer, what happens is light goes in various different directions and also has various angles. When you use a polarizer, it just takes one of those angles away. So as you shift the polarizer around, you can actually completely take away a reflection. So if you're shooting a picture of water and you want to see underneath the water, if you use a polarizer, all of a sudden you don't see a reflection coming off of it. For those who are wondering if you could do it, yes, you could do 2 polarizers and completely remove all reflections. Or if you don't want to see what's on an LCD, because LCDs have lines or pixels, you can actually completely remove an image. It's really weird when you have a polarizer in your camera and you rotate it, and all of a sudden something just completely disappears. And so a polarizer allows you to do that, but also gives you bluer skies, and it also takes a little bit of brightness away. So a polarizer is a great thing to have. A case like here, the top left image, that's me emulating polarizer. The position of the light was that where I didn't get as much of a reflection. You can see it on the bottom. But if there was too much reflection in there, using a polarizer will limit the amount that was on the subject. All right, so you can also kick it up a notch, guys. When you're shooting outside, and use a smoke machine. A smoke machine is more than just a smoke. Something that's really neat is as it dissipates. For those who don't know, you need a surface for light to hit on for it to be visible. Light's there, but until you have a surface, it's not going to really look visible. So if anyone wants to do a creative fun shot, like in the woods, light streaming in, buy a bunch of smoke bombs. Throw a bunch out there, and then within a few minutes, you'll see beams of light. Like you want to put a freaking sword in the middle and hope Arthur comes in, because it's just that pretty. I mean, you might not have power out there to do a fog machine, but for those who don't know, like if you're shooting in your basement and there's light coming in, you may notice that your basement is a little bit more cooler looking than upstairs because you dust upstairs. When you go downstairs and you shake the dust around, it starts picking up what's there. So that's why older churches look cooler than cleaner, newer churches where the lights are beaming in. So buy a fog machine. You can get one at Spencer's for $50 and just pump some fog in there, and you have this cool looking scene where light's intercepting the fog and creating light beams. And that's how you do it, guys. All right, let's go move to the next one. And so, other useful tools, guys, secure your stuff. Once again, this is obvious, but buy sandbags from Amazon for $8. They're only $8 now. Something else you can do is if you're going to shoot by any sort of body of water, just bring a jug. It's 8 pounds per gallon. So fill the jug with water, tighten it up, put it on your stand. When you're done, just pour it out. You don't have to carry around the weight as much. Secure your stuff, guys. Bring sandbags if you don't have assistants. They can be there could be the reason why you don't have a massively expensive repair bill. Even though we did have the sandbags down, Patrick, did we sandbag that one light down that one day? Or we didn't? We did, right? We did? Yeah, just be safe, because Patrick and I were shooting, we were having fun, and two of his lights went in the water. And so we could have saved so much hassle. Cool part about though is the light still works after a week, right, Patrick? But then, yeah, he put it in rice and absorbed all the water, and then he quickly dropped one of them and broke the back LCD. So now it still works, except it doesn't have a back LCD. All right. Also be aware, or keep aware of weather conditions. Just go to the grocery store, get a couple of bags, throw it in there. Your camera's not going to instantly melt like in Witch and the Wizard of Oz if it touches water. It can take a few drops, but in a little part of your bag somewhere, just have a couple of bags, or a couple of bags, and just put it in somewhere and cover it up. All right, so next one. All right, so guys, understanding depth of field. Does anyone have any questions concerning lighting outside?
The reflectors, we have like this, right? One is the white, one is the silver.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any guidelines like what conditions we need to use?
Yeah, silver. If you have a pale subject, really harsh light. That's really bright. And so for a pale subject, actually gold is what some people would suggest, but it's too gold for me. There's an interwoven gold and silver, which is I recommend. Like if you guys get a reflector, my suggestion on general portraiture usage is pure white, and then what's called sunbounce and so on, and that's interwoven gold and silver, and that's a more natural looking form. Can you grab sunbounce? It looks like a giant agent's shield or whatever. So, and essentially, if you had to choose one, silver, unfortunately, is really, really harsh, and it's really like bright, really silverish. It does reflect the color of whatever it is. So, is it locked? Is it locked? Okay. So I don't have a sunbounce one, but the interwoven one is a powdered silver gold that reflects a more natural looking warmth to it. So if you guys buy reflectors, you may notice it's like 5-in-1 reflector. It's because one's white, one actually reflects black, I'll go ahead and say this to you guys. You can reflect black. I know it's really weird saying that, but if Sarah's here and you have a black foam core board here, it actually gets darker over here. And so it's a neat way to do it if you guys want to do sort of a more noirish, dramatic type look. There's white, silver, and so on. All right, guys. Is there any other questions concerning lighting out there? We could
use external flash and the
Yes, I do, and I'll cover that in a little bit more. We talk about field flash, which is one component of it, and also overpowering the sun. The last 2 slides is about overpowering the sun and then field flash. All right, guys, so we're going to talk about optimizing depth of field here. All right, so one of the benefits about shooting outside is you have a lot of space. Something that I find when I do my one-on-ones is people get told that your aperture is the only thing that controls depth of field. There's 4 factors that control it, and so that's what we're going to talk about. But understanding depth of field is important for portraiture outside. Many successful photographs outside won't really actually show you the background in detail. It's an abstract idea of the background, guys. I want you guys to think of any photos that really stand out in your head, and think, just any of them, and try to explain all the details of the background. It really doesn't exist. You have an abstract idea of it. Some of the most successful photos that we've taken, I'll probably go ahead and tell you, is because you just spoon-fed your audience a little bit about what the background is, but you have a subject. The blurrier your background, the more attention you give to your subject. But you may not want it too blurry. But if you have it too sharp, then the whole image is competing for your viewer's eyes. And so what I find the most successful images are, this isn't a guarantee, but 80% of the time, it's having an abstract idea of the background, which is controlling depth of field. All right, so when we get our viewers to engage their memories and recall, we get our viewers to engage our photographs more. That's the cool part about it. When you take a picture of something and someone sees, like if I say, I use the Steve McCurry's picture of the Afghan girl. You guys remember beautiful eyes? What color was the background, guys? Anybody? It was blue. What was the background?
A wall.
It's a wall. But she's an Afghan girl and all that. So what do you think might be the background? Maybe a shed or something like that? If you look at the picture, you don't know. And none of us ever question. We just accept it as it is. The picture of the Navy guy kissing the girl, tilting her down with the other Navy guys around her. Where was that shot, guys? New York City. Can you tell what street it's on? Not at all. Is it a sidewalk?
It was in the street.
It was in the street. But we generally know what it is, right, guys? None of us can say. That's the cool thing I love about it. We really don't know what the background is, but we're recalling it in. And that's some of the most successful photographs. That's what it kind of looks like. It's just a recall of a memory or so on that we're bringing in. So controlling depth of field helps you manipulate the viewers staring at what you want them to, and it really helps your composition. So if anyone wants to know how to take your photography to the next level, you are manipulating your viewers. This is what I want you to look at. This is what I'm going to spoon feed a little bit of you to. This is the ideal. It's pretty much the matrix when it comes to your photos. This is your surroundings that you see, but this is your subject, and you concentrate on that. So guys, concerning depth of field, there are 4 factors to always consider to optimize your depth of field. You want to know these hands-on, and you want to actually just keep on practicing. Using the combination of all 4, you can really either make the depth of field really in-depth or really detailed, or you can make it extremely blurry. So if you combine them all 4 together to get really shallow depth of field, you can get really shallow depth of field. Or you can just mess with 2 of them and don't mess with 2 of the others, and it's just not going to be as much manipulation. Or you can do all 4 and get the other one, the other side there, and get extremely deep depth of field. So one of the first ones you guys know is the f-stop of your lens. The higher the number, the larger the depth of field, right, guys? And so if you're shooting f16, you see more of the foreground and background in focus. If you shoot 2.8, you see your subject in focus, but your foreground and background starts blurring more. Something I want to go ahead and make sure you guys know is your camera only focuses on one point. If you have 6 people, you only focus on one. So Jamie, can I see you? Rachel, can I see you? So this is important here, guys. stand by each other. Jamie, stand a little bit forward. Don't you stand a little bit back? All right, guys, so you focus on Sarah. Jamie instantly becomes a background or a foreground subject. Rachel instantly becomes a background subject. That's the reality of it. They're not people. They are elements in it. So the only thing you're focused on is Sarah. So the only thing you control is move Rachel forward, Jamie goes back, and now they're all within focal plane. So I want you guys to all realize that. For that's number 4. But number 1, the f-stop of your lens. The higher the number, the more depth of field starting from Sarah's face. All right, the distance you are physically from your subject. This is the cool one right here. The closer you are to your subject, shallower the depth of field. So let's say you're at 2.8. Anything you're focused on your nose, so anything here is in focus, right guys? The closer you move in, the smaller the depth of field. The further you move away, the more it expands out. Sorry, what was that? Exactly. And so if anyone's shooting a group of people, you're at a wedding, and you have your 50 millimeter on, and you're like, shit, you know, I got to shoot a group of people, step back 4 feet, and you're going to get more in focus. You know, if you want to isolate it in, step in closer, and you're going to get less depth of field. So that's one of the quick ways to do it. Just physically move in and out. So does anyone have like a crop camera with your 1855 kit lens? You guys still have it? You can shoot a killer headshot with it if you go to 55 and you move in close, because it starts just blurring that background out. Which leads into the next one. The third option is the millimeter length. The lower the number, the wider the point of view. The higher the number, the closer it is. The closer you get in, the shallower the depth of field. So if you go to 200 millimeter on Sarah, your perspective goes in, but also the background blurs out more. And so the wider it goes, if you go to 18, the background compresses in more, the background becomes more apparent. And so if you guys are shooting there, what I want to suggest, or what I want to tell you guys outside too with lenses, if you shoot 200 millimeters, if I shoot 200 millimeters with her, I roughly get from here to here the background, anything that's there. If I move up onto her and I go to 18, I get anything that's over here all the way out to over here. So if you guys are dealing with an outside location and you don't want to see everything, step back and zoom in. And that's going to limit what you see in the background. So that's extremely important to do, because when you're location scouting, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, you guys don't want the whole thing. Has anyone ever been to medieval times back in so on? The funny part about that is the thing's ginormous. And sometimes people just don't want that in there. And so to get it, you really need a wide angle, but a lot of people just zoom in too and try to just get a headshot. And so what I mean by that is a lot of locations that we use, guys, when you see a location in a picture, you actually really don't need all of it. You just need only a small portion. And so that's why you're using a telephoto lens at like 200, 150 millimeters is ideal. All right, so, and the last one is what we just covered. The most obvious one. Jamie, if I can head back up here. Once again, you can only focus on one point, guys. If you want me to be in focus and you want Jamie to be in focus, you have to physically move us in, because now we're in the focus point. We are background and foreground elements. Sarah is your subject. I'm a tree and you don't want me to be in focus. What's your option, guys? Move the tree. Or move your subject, right? So you do compare. You move 15 feet back, she moves 15 feet forward, and now she's 15 feet away from the tree. The further she's away from your point of focus, better. But you can compound it to move about a few feet forward. And now what you can do is you move forward closer to her. So you're combining two aspects. You're moving her away from the tree, which is me, and then you're moving yourself forward, and you're actually giving you that much more shallow depth of field. And so you can also change the millimeter length of your lens, or you can change your aperture. The only problem with aperture, guys, as soon as you change your aperture, you affect your exposure. All the other three, you can adjust without adjusting your exposure. And so it's one of those quick things where if you want shallower depth of field, just get in close. So one of the, I'm not selling this to you guys, but has anyone here have the Canon 50 1.8? All right, so the Canon 50 1.8 is not a bad lens. But this one just came out, it's 40 millimeters, 2.8. 2.8 from Canon. And the difference is the Canon 51.8, you require 20 inches is your minimum focus distance. This one's 9 inches. And so you can get right by your subject closer. The closer you get to your subject, the blurrier the background gets. So this lens at 2.8 looks blurrier. The background looks blurrier than the 51.8. So one of the things you want to do, guys, mostly for shooting outside, is look at the minimum focus distance of a lens. The closer you can get in, the extra shallower depth of field that you can get. So.
Well, it shows up the defects in the face.
It does show the defects if you get in closer, but it's also, it's one of those things where, you know, proper makeup and so on, that's post-processing, but it's neat though when you are able to blur the background and so on. So, I mean, your subject will vary. That's the thing, like, and also with proper lighting, you won't see any of that. With small light sources, I'll go ahead and tell you guys this now, if you haven't taken any of my lighting classes, small light sources will show you every pore and detail on the face. If you're working with a subject who has bad skin or who has lots of wrinkles and so on, the bigger your light source, those shadows get filled in, and you don't see them. Or those crevasses, you know, all of that gets filled in. You don't see it as much. So.
But with 1.4 is so sharp, still sharp.
1.4? It really depends. Like, it really depends on the makeup and all that too. So, it varies. All right, guys. So does that make sense, depth of field wise? Some of you guys, you guys know already. Some of you guys, who here has looked online and they say aperture is how you change your depth of field? Sometimes that happens. I've noticed that a lot with my students. They go to a class and they're told, oh, change your f-stop if you want to get more depth of field. If you're at a wedding or if you're shooting a group of people and you only have one shot, step back, zoom out, go to, instead of going from f4 to f5, 6, f8, which you might not have a lot of light, step back, zoom out wider, same exact effect. If you're controlling a group of people, this is a little bit separated from that. Focus on one person, you say, hey, get in close, guys, get in the line, so on. That's how you get everyone in. So that's how you get, a great shot with everyone in focus. All right, guys, our lens selection, because you have a lot of space to deal with, try using both wide and telephoto lenses to get results. Wide lenses show more of the surroundings, which could distract from your subject. That's what I actually want to go ahead and remind people of. When you're shooting outdoors, a lot of times you want to remind yourself, what is the purpose of this image? I know it's really weird saying that, but if you're taking a picture of a person, what's the purpose of that image, guys? The person. So if you have this grand idea of this giant-ass cruise ship in your photo, and they're just a part of it, you're taking a picture of a cruise ship with a person in it. That's your subject, the cruise ship, not the person. And so the reason why that's relevant is if you use a really wide angle, guys, if you go 20 millimeters plus, more than likely you're going to get more of your surroundings than you're going to get your subject. So you want to be aware of that. You want to define what your viewer is supposed to see. It's one of the first things that you should do with your photographs. Say, okay, I want them to see Sarah, or I want them to see the whole room. And so, while telephotos do a great job isolating your subjects and blurring out the surroundings, that's the opposite end of it. What if you want to see a little bit of your surroundings? You might not want to shoot at 500 millimeters. That means it completely obliterates the background. You guys may have seen a sports shot with it where Noshan Marino back 4 years ago was jumping over that lineman, and it's just him. You can't tell what stadium it's in. You can't tell. You might see Florida colors in the background. You don't know. If someone made it black and white, you would totally not know, what team he's playing against. And so, using a high telephoto lens will start completely blurring the background. So what I suggest there, guys, is have both lenses. Try to figure it out. And the cool thing about shooting outside is you can walk forward and you can walk back, and you want to explore that. You don't want to safely always stay 8 feet away from your subject. Try moving back and forth and seeing how that gets your scenery. All right, so prime lenses can be great outdoors along with a fast 2.8 lens. I want to go ahead and talk about this, guys. The benefit of a prime lens isn't the fact that you can always shoot 1.4. It's the fact that you can shoot 1.4 to f16. You can do the exact same thing a zoom lens can, plus the extra. You just can't zoom in and out. So if you have, the best of both worlds is eventually getting a zoom lens that does 2.8. No, you can't do 1.4. No, you can't do 2. But you can do a lot more, or you can do a lot faster speeds than 4.0, 5.6. But you can still also do f8, f11, f16, and so on. For those who don't know, 2 stops down from your full open is what's considered the prime spot of the sharpness of your lens. So if you have a 1.4 lens, if you go to 2.8, your lens is really sharp. If you're on a 4.0 lens, you have to go to f8. So if anyone's using prime lens, if you shoot 2.0 or 2.8 with your prime lens, you're going to get a clearer, nicer shot than you will with a zoom lens at 2.8. And so just be aware that prime lenses are really fun, are really useful. Personally, I use a range of 35 millimeters to 200. This one's 135, this one's 50, that one's 35. So that's, I use that full range, and I use, if anyone looks at my, if anyone looks at the exit data of my photos on my 500px, you'll see that I shoot from 1.2 to f32. There really isn't I have to have this f-stop all the time. It's a whatever I want to use. For those who don't know, if you go above f16, you'll start getting diffraction. If you're really anal about it, that means you lose image quality. You go from f16 to f22 to f32, it isn't as good looking as it is at f16, at f13, f11. The truth be told, it's nitpicky about it, and I use whatever is needed. And images now from our camera, like your Rebels now, guys. Anyone here have a Rebel? Which Rebel do you have? XSI. It's a little bit older. Which Rebel?
T1i.
T1i. It's a little bit older too, but I will say this: 15 years ago, those cameras were $15,000. And so anyone who's familiar with Moore's law, it exists in the camera world. Every 18 months, we're pretty much doubling what we had a few years ago. The cameras you buy now, the Rebels you buy now, cost $10,000 8 years ago. Just so you guys know that. And so the image quality is that good. And so when we talk about diffraction and all that, we're nitpicky about things that we really shouldn't be nitpicky about. The image quality isn't that bad at all. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so some technical things that you can do with your cameras, guys. And there's a lot of information. I apologize. I had really a lot of fun making this PowerPoint. So I was like, great. It's one of those subjects where you talk about shooting outdoors, but when you actually start doing it, you don't know exactly what you want to talk about. And so there's a lot of just fun information. This one's a good one here. White balance. Anyone ever shoot in the woods before? Just like in the woods, covered canopy and stuff like that? What sucks about it is light filters through leaves. And as soon as it filters through leaves, your white balance does not know what to do. And so what you want to do, guys, is go ahead and manually set your white balance. But for those who don't know, anyone here done white balance before? You guys know it's color temperature, right? What you can also adjust is magenta and green. So one of the most accurate ways to do white balance is to get a gray card. Go ahead and get a gray card, shoot your first shot with a gray card, and then you can either manually put your white balance in your camera, or later if you open up Lightroom and you click on that gray card and you get that white balance, you can apply it to all of your images. So that's another way to do it. But essentially, a gray card with the white balance, use a gray card, you define what's pure gray on your camera that lights, and then your camera will take that setting and apply it to all the other images. And so if you want accurate color, use a gray card, guys, and you'll be able to get some good shots going there. If you guys are shooting outside during snow, if you guys are doing that, your camera is going to lie to you about exposure. It's going to try to get all the white snow gray. And so your camera is going to go ahead and really lower your exposure. You want to adjust for that too. So a gray card will actually get you not just color balance, but proper exposure. If you expose on a gray card with snow in the background and you zoom into the gray card, it's going to give you accurate exposure comparatively to not having it. Also, guys, if you add color temperature about 300 to 500 degrees, you can get more light to your image. So let's say you're in a studio and studio lights are 5,500 degrees. This is 2,800 degrees right here. If you put it at 3,100 or 32, you'll add a little bit more warmth to the image, and you'll make the person look more alive. And so it's one of those things where creatively, outside it's really cool, because you can shoot in the middle of winter, you can shoot December when all the leaves are falling, and your camera's going to say it's about 4,700 degrees. You pop it to 5,900 degrees, and it looks like September. So you have this pile of leaves, and you can reshoot pictures of a model in it, a person in it, and it's going to be nice, beautiful, and warm like a fall day. And that's just by manipulating the white balance. And instead of giving or using what your camera says you should use, you just jack it up about 400 to 500 degrees more. All right. Guys,
On that last slide, did you use smoke at all?
On this one, actually this one is Photoshop. This one is, there's no smoke added, but there was a light ray that was added in. For anyone who is, anyone who's Photoshop savvy, you create a new layer, you go to radial blur, and there's a zoom option. You can zoom and do it all the way, and it's going to make a streak wherever you define it. And that's how you can create light streaks. So if anyone's interested in that later, just find me and I'll tell you how it's done.
So in this case, would you recommend white balance? Like we are shooting now.
Well,
It's 28.
right now it's about 2850 for tungsten. Tungsten varies with 2850 to 3200 degrees. So what you would do is you would look at it at 2800, and then you would add a little bit more, 3100 or so on. Studio Flash is where it's really an area, where if you work with Studio Strobe, it's around 5500 degrees. But if you put it at 5800, you can really see a lot of warmth added in. And for anyone who's wondering, do I do white balance? Yes, you can. Yes, you can change white balance on your camera, like in RAW. But the reason why I do white balance real time is if a client asks you to look at photos on the back of your camera, they might. You can't tell them I can fix it in post if they look blue. If you're white balance, if you're depending on auto white balance, and they look at it and it looks like they are slightly cool, you've lost them. And you can't explain to them I can fix it in post. They're like, why doesn't it look right? By immediately setting it up, so instead of being naturally at 5500 degrees, you add a little bit of warmth, they see it and they're like, wow, I look great. And that little emphasis that they give you makes it that much easier to shoot. So, all right, guys. So now adding fill flash here. If there's too much shadow on the face, look straight that way. If there's too much shadow on the face, you can add fill flash in. And what that does is it minimizes the strength of the shadow. Fill light, guys, isn't. We talked about this in the lighting class before. Fill light doesn't come from here. If your light's over there, it doesn't come from the opposite direction. Fill light comes from your camera. It always comes from your camera. So you want to remember that. If you have a flash on your camera and you're standing here, does anyone have a Canon flash? I didn't bring mine. Sure.
So TCO and so you
Alright, and so with fill flash, I'm going to go ahead and adjust it a little bit, but the fill flash isn't meant to overpower the shadow that's already there. It's just meant to go ahead and fill the shadows in a little bit more. I will. So ideally, you guys, it's also a mixed color right now, so I don't want to deal with that. So essentially, if you're shooting with sun, and the sun's coming over there, and this is actually about 3,200 degrees or 2,800 degrees, guys, which isn't the same as the sun. The sun's about 5,500 degrees. So with your flash, you want to adjust the power so it's only slightly bright. You don't want it full power. So when the light hits, the shadows are just not as deep. In the case here, the light is coming from above Elizabeth, and it's coming straight from straight up there. And so what we're doing is I added a little bit of light in to fill in her face. And so you still see the shadow detail that's coming in from the sun on this portion of her face, but you're not. It's not completely dark on her face shadow-wise. We're filling the light in. So for anyone who doesn't have a flash at all, it's good to have one, to go ahead and do that with fill flash. Also, the main thing about fill flash, guys, is you don't want it to create its own shadow. When you're shooting with flash, if you can see your own another shadow being created by the flash, it's too strong. You want to limit it. You want to go ahead and bring it down. So that's where you use flash exposure compensation. By doing that, you can say, flash, you're not as strong as you should be. Go down to -3. Go down to -2. And so where this is relevant is, I want to see if there's a fancy task. see. You have a fancy hat in the book? See that? See if there's a fancy hat back there. Hey guys. I found a hat, Sarah, that's totally doesn't match your outfit.
I can change.
No, we're good. But it's fancy.
The fanciest of hats.
All right, guys, so you can't control the sun, you can't control the position of the sun, and you're dealing with it. So we're going to put a hat on.
Bring up my national roots.
And then, yeah, just normal. You guys see what's just happening with the shadows interface? So it's a cool shot though, but you don't want that much shadows, so a fill flash will supplement or will fill the shadows in. You don't completely obliterate the shadows. It's still there, but it's just not as harsh. So that's the idea behind it. You take a flash out and you add a little bit of light in. But one of the cool things that we can do too is look towards the light. And you guys notice that direction, direction of light, opposite side of where light hits its shadows? We're putting the light directly on our face. That means we're getting less shadow being cast by the hat. So, all right, it's perfect there. So one of the things that most people do when they're wearing a hat is if you want a picture of someone in a hat, you want the light to hit their face, you have them lay on the floor. You have them like kind of hold the hat, and so you can actually get the sun hitting directly on them, and then the light hitting directly on their face. So that's one of the ways people do it there. But use flash exposure compensation, guys. Look for that button right here, plus and minus, to take away from your light or add on to it. But remember, fill light always comes from around your camera. It doesn't come from a different angle. So, and you don't want to create another shadow with your fill light. All right, any questions concerning fill light, guys? Fill flash? None? All right. All right, so guys, working with your talent outside. I'm going to go ahead and apologize about this one. This is all obvious stuff. And so if there's anyone who has a question, specific questions about working with models or talents, feel free to ask. But when I wrote this up, I was thinking of like really obvious things to put up there that make a lot of sense. Main thing, guys, is the key to working with talent outside. This is extremely important. It's create. I know it sounds silly, but you're dealing with the elements. You're dealing with all that. Having a place someone knows that they can go to either change, be comfortable, get a drink, use a restroom is important. So one of the main things why I love this place is you don't have to rent Photoplex to use the studio. I know it's really silly to say that, but you have 4 dressing rooms here. Nothing is stopping you from saying, meet me up here. This is where our base is going to be. Take one of the dressing rooms, change in there, and we're going to shoot around Alpharetta. You guys see where I'm going from there? You're creating a safe haven. You can use your car, leave the AC running. I'll leave the AC running in my car. I don't worry about gas. If it means I'm going to have a subject who's a lot more comfortable, who has a place to sit in when it's really hot out there to cool off and stuff like that. All right, it's extremely important. When a person knows they have a place to recompose, clean up, and also fresh up, it helps. Why that's relevant is, hey Sarah, I'm going to throw you in the lake. We're going to shoot in the lake. I have a towel. There you go. That's all I have a towel. I'm prepped up. Here's the safe haven, blah, 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 for you to go ahead and come back and reset yourself back to what you were before we started shooting. Because otherwise, hey, there's water right there. Jump on it. It's only half where a model's going to say they're going to do it. If you have, if you worked with them before, or they're going to be like, no, not today. So it's important. So one of the things that a lot of prepared people do, this is really neat, is they would just go to the dollar rack at like a drugstore, and they would buy hairspray. They would buy all of that and create this little safety kit that goes in the back of their car, because it might be what exactly they need, and they're prepared for it. When you look prepared and you're ready, you can do more. You can do more last-second stuff, and have fun with it. So bring water, drinks, towels, etc. for your subject. All right. Here's a really iffy one. I love escorts. Because one of the things is I've shot so many photos that I get tired of just doing photos. I love talking photography to people. So the worst thing, I think you actually had this with Chris, right? You brought Chris, and I just chatted up with him.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, Sarah, I worked with her before.
We shot you just up to a random person, and it was very enlightening for me.
So I love people. And so if a model brings an escort, I'm not one of those photographers who say, don't bring an escort. You know, they brought an escort because they wanted to be comfortable. They don't necessarily know what's going on. They have maybe different experience levels. So I see an escort as a blessing if they aren't shady people. There are shady escorts out there, so be aware of that. And so the cool thing about it, though, is an escort can be a reflector holder. You saw the benefit that a reflector had. Just this holding over her eyes on a sunny day was amazing. And so here's this person that they know, and I'm perfectly fine with them joking around with each other, as long as I can get the model's attention once in a while. But one of the things I say to people, and Mark, you've heard me say this, is when they're talking to their friends, something I like to say to get a reaction from a model is, pretend that I just told you the funniest joke in the world. I don't tell them a joke. I let them work at it, and then they use their energy together, and they might remind each other of something that stupidly happened last night. Maybe the escort got drunk and fell over or something like that. And so I get this natural reaction from the subject while they're also helping. But if they move, I don't get all about it or so on. They're already there. I just shoot, but here's this person helping, helping there. Comfort level of your model creates great photos. Work with what you're given. If someone calls you, and I've had this before, I deal with a lot of, talking to models, and they'll say, yeah, I talked to this photographer once, and I told them, hey, I'm bringing an escort, or I'm bringing someone with me, and they flipped out. And I felt for the photographer because I can understand that, guys, but the thing that got me was the fact that the photographer didn't realize it was a comfort level. Even if the model went there without an escort, now they're scared. Now they're not comfortable, and that reflects in photos. And so it's just one of those things, guys, just the comfort level of your model is extremely important. If you have an assistant, it's extremely helpful as the assistant to make sure the model is comfortable too, or whoever you're working with. As a second shooter at a wedding, this sounds a little bit off, but one of my main things is giving water to the bride and groom. It's not me taking photos. I love taking photos as a second shooter, but if I can make make the bride and groom happy, those are better photos that the primary photographer's taking. So I take care of the primary photographer, and I take care of the bride and groom, even if it means me doing menial shit, because that's how you get good photos. And so with your assistant, some of you guys are going to assist each other here. One of the best ways you can assist is in your camera bag, have a couple bottles of cold water, and have it ready at whoever's disposal. Because it could be one of those things where the main photographer doesn't know what the next thing they want to do. That's that small little thing that they can do to pass, to sort of balance out. And also, just in general, models love it when someone takes care of them and someone's helpful there too. And so when you're assisting, it looks great and it works really well. So if you have an assistant with you and you have a whiteboard and you're standing outside and you're not shooting your shit, have them hold the whiteboard above the model so they're under shade, stuff like that and all that too. All right, guys. Why that's important is you might be in the middle of adjusting your camera stuff. It might be taking a little bit of time. It puts them in a comfortable environment while you're doing your thing, and it just makes the whole experience that much better. All right, so this is going back to a little bit before. I find many models comfortable with going to extremes such as being in water or laying on rocks and dirt if you showcase them ahead of time your idea. Like Pinterest is plagiarism. I'll go ahead and say that, but it's good plagiarism. Go ahead and showcase what you want, potentially want. I'm terrible at this. You know that. I'm like, hey Trent, what's the idea? I don't know. Let's just do something. But what I would say though is if I say, hey, are you willing to be in the water, or if you're willing to do this, I am willing to pay for it now. Like, well, to pay, it's like, hey, go to Goodwill. You have $20. I'll pay you back when you get there. So in case of someone like Sarah, I'll be like, here's your budget. You can have any of the stuff, but we might fuck up one of them. And we've done that. And so the $20 buys a lot from the Goodwill. So, she has one outfit that she's going to keep, and then one outfit that you may never see again. But I want that. I want that in the shot. So that's That's what I'm willing to do. And so I will work on the skill set of the model. I don't necessarily know all the time what they like. So I'll tell them, this is your budget, go out and get it, and have fun. I think the last one we did Film Noir was like $70 or something like that. It worked out really well. So, all right, guys. So it's a lot to ask to get a person to potentially permanently damage clothing. So try to provide alternatives, such as you buying the clothing and stuff like that. People are more than willing to work with you if you offer reasonable alternatives, and also you're kind of open-minded about it. I tend to have a lot of success on my end if I'm able to say, hey, you know, I'll buy the dress. The thing is, I don't really care about if it's going to be like, you don't need a perfect fitting dress. Someone doesn't have to go next door that someone would love.
Charlotte Russe.
Yeah. You go there, and Charlotte Russe is actually a little bit on the cheaper end, but it's like $30 for a dress, right?
Yeah.
So $30, $40. But the thing is, that's for a perfectly fit dress that you can buy a dress from Goodwill and pin it, and it's just for the photo shoot that day, and then you can ruin it, and it's $2, right? So, or $5. So just be aware of that, guys. All right, actually, this is the copy of another one, but it has Aaron, or a copy of the same one, but it has Aaron on it. So, all right, so guys, that's working with the model outside. Is there any questions, or is there anything you want to ask me about that? Here's your time about the talent.
So what about the location? How do you select the location based?
That is coming up right now. Let's talk about models first. Here's the thing, it's more than just me, guys. Here's a model who does location shots and wardrobe. Here's your time to ask her any questions that might pertain. Anyone have any questions about that? It's, you know, it's kind of on the spot, but you ask her anything. So, anybody? All right.
What's the biggest pet peeve?
Photographers not knowing what they want, but also not being able to give me a direction. Like, I can give you 5 outfits and 3 keywords. I want it black, I want it shiny, I want it to look like Catwoman. Like, that can give me a whole handful of ideas. But photographers then having no idea what they want just means I get to do what I want. Which some photographers are fine with, but it doesn't help you. It doesn't help me create your image.
So something with that though, depending on the type of shoot you're doing with the model, if it's TFP, if it's for yourself, so on, you should have a general idea of what you would like, but sometimes it's just kind of putzing it out. But something that I do say to models is you're your own brand. I see it as a marketing approach. My photography is my brand, and I kind of know what I want, but I like to diversify. But on the model sense or on the talent sense, I ask them, what are you aiming for? And it helps define it for them, because they put themselves in a certain mindset or a certain genre. If they say, I love your Ophelia shoot that you've been doing, that's what I do, bam, that's the path that we're going. But if they don't necessarily know either, that's where you cater in. You ask, what are your goals as a model? So in Sarah's sense, when we first started shooting, I like the fact that she did wardrobes. And so we did a diverse amount of things because I wanted to see how she interacted in the wardrobes that she did. So we did a steampunk one. We did, on her birthday, which I think is one of your favorite shoots, was actually just a casual old Hollywood one. And so she had the wardrobes to handle that. But the main thing I wanted, like, what is her personal goals as a model? And how does that coincide with me? And so there are times, guys, I will go ahead and say this, that you're going to tell a talent, no, I don't want to work with you, because I don't see the benefit. I know it sounds terrible saying that, but if you guys don't match up and what your viewpoints are and what you want to do, then don't push it. You know, it might not. You want to do photos that sustain your love for this. And you want them to do photos that sustain their love. What are the type of things that now that you would only charge for that you wouldn't do for free?
Well, outfits that I have published, that I have built myself, are always the ones that people want to rent, but they want to do trade. And I'm like, I already have pictures of those. Why would I trade those? That's not a mutually beneficial trade as a wardrobe provider. A lot of people think that because I'm a model that I have to trade just because I need to build a portfolio, but because I've been doing this for such a long time, I don't need that. It has to be mutually beneficial to be a good trade. And that could be a photographer's style as well. If it doesn't show the kind of dramatic lighting I need for this costume, or like the light, flamboyant But this costume, it won't work for me.
So that's the thing, when you're talking with your models, guys, you want to figure out what they want, what they don't want, and if you can provide what they want, it could be something that, something that works well. All right, so with that, guys, I don't think anyone else has any other questions. Let's do scouting locations and scenery here. All right, guys, with scouting for locations, don't always get too caught up on how the whole thing looks. Has anyone ever shot a wedding here? You have people who fall in love with the venue, right? How much of a percentage of a venue do you actually shoot? Not much at all. Same mindset comes when it comes to a model or talent. People fall in love with this great giant thing, but in the end of it all, you're only shooting a small portion of it. And so why that's relevant to you is when you look at something, look at it on micro, not a macro level. Look at it like these. Look at it on the segments that you can get and how it works out. Because this right here, picture of Kim, this was shot on a trail right by Lakeland here. That's it. We're walking, I was like, Kim, sit over there. Bam. That's pretty much it. There wasn't a pre-designed spot in my head where like, oh, we're going here. There are spaces like that I found over time. But when I'm out there scouting and I'm looking around, guys, I'm not saying, okay, we got to go here because this is where the great shots can be. Because the problem with you is you don't know necessarily where the sun's going to be or how you're going to be at that certain time, or the weather's going to be like and all that. So you don't need a massive amount of scenery to get a great location. If you ever go to Little 5 Points, there's a lot of graffiti up, but you're not getting a whole wall of graffiti, you're only getting a portion. So there's actually, if your model's okay with it, she actually might be, or he might be standing right by a dumpster. Because that's the best place it looks like. You don't have a dumpster in the shot. You're just getting this element. So that's the mindset I want you guys to be on when you're shooting outside. You don't need a giant piece of scenery that looks great. All you need is what you want to show on your picture. And it might not be that much. So most of the time you're only using a small percentage. Just think on the micro scale. Having a great network of go-to fellow photographers can be great, but a lot of photographers are afraid to show their location. I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. A lot of them have reasons to. I will always go ahead and tell where I shoot, guys, because that's just me. But there are photographers who have used the place before, and they share it, they're open to it, but the other people who use it don't treat it with the respect that it deserves, and all of a sudden, it's just not available. That's the thing. People have been burned in doing this. And so my suggestion is if you love a location another photographer used, think of it as a barter system, offer something. Don't contact someone and say, where did you shoot this? And then get angry if they don't reply. That's the thing. Happens to me all the time. Most of the time I'll be like, oh, this is where it's at. But I'll be honest, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the Ophelia ones where I've shot in the woods. I'll tell people, yeah, it's at Jones Bridge Park, or it's at Settles Bridge. It's also 3 miles away from the entrance in one cardinal direction. So I don't tell them exactly where it is, because I don't want to be like, this is exactly where it's at. Because I don't want to type it out, because all they're asking is, where's the shot at? There's no offer that's given to me other than, where did you do this? Because I want to do it. And so I'll be courteous, this is where it's at, but then I'll let them do the work. So on. But if it's a friend here, if you're a meeting shoot member, we're big about saying, this is exactly where it's shot. This is Soap Creek, Soft Creek, and stuff like that. Is Lou back there still? Lou head out? Lou and I, we all run nice little groups together. Lou has some great locations, and he's pretty open about sharing his stuff too. So he does a lot of great location workshops. So if Lou comes back, I don't know if he has to go answer a call or something. Talk to him and get his info. And he does a lot of local outside shooting that you guys might want to check out. All right. So popular. There you go. Hey, Lou. Are you doing any outside ones anytime soon?
Not till October.
Not till October?
Yeah.
I just told him to check your stuff out. So if you have any cars or anything, what's the name of your group again?
It's the Roswell on location photography.
Which the funny part is, it's called Roswell on location. I think your last year have been in Atlanta.
Well, it was Georgia, and some lady raised the state because that was the name of her company.
Oh.
And the meetup changed my name without even telling me.
Oh man.
And then the lady went out of business.
Well, she deserved it. So, you guys love Lou's because he takes care of everyone. He's a great guy, but also he does a lot of on-location one. And then you go to places like the Roswell Mill, which normally needs a license, but you're able to do
I have the license.
Yeah, so
And the way I kind of get around it is I call it an instructional workshop. So I have the license, you don't need one, you're my students.
he'll take care of you. He'll umbrella you in. So check out his group, and it's been a good one. He's been to a lot of our events, and unfortunately, I haven't been to a lot of yours yet. So I want to check those out. All right, guys. So it sometimes works best if you have something to share with people. If you want a location, feel free to message me for any locations you may have seen that I've used. All right. So when I'm looking for a location, guys, I just drive around, and whatever catches the eyes, I take notice. I hate saying this, but you guys remember 17 years ago when gas was 87 cents a gallon? Yeah, I drove a lot more back then than I do. So, yeah, it sucks. I got a quick thing though. Like, I'm not that old. When I was in high school, I made $7.50 an hour, and gas was 87 cents a gallon. Now gas is 6 times that price. Kids aren't making 6 times that now. That messes with my mind. I don't know how kids are dealing with it now. Because it costs like, fill up your car, it costs like $60. Back in the day when I filled up my S10, it was like $17. It was weird. I don't know how kids are dealing with it.
Yeah, they stand over and then go head for it.
That's terrible.
Like 28.
When I turned 16, the first place I drove to was Chicago. Like, I don't even think that's like reasonable now. Like, and I remember it cost me to go to Chicago from here. It cost me $83. Like round trip. So it was.
And that's 10.
And an S10. So driving like a 16-year-old idiot who did get a ticket in Chicago. So, all right, guys. Here's the cool part. A lot of you guys have smartphones, right? You go to a location, you love it, bring up your map app, bam, take a screenshot there, email yourself. This is what's cool. If you have a GPS, mark it. Take Evernote. Anyone here use Evernote? Evernote is Explorer. It's one of the coolest things that you can get. You use Evernote, you open up Evernote, you take a camera, you take a few shots, all of a sudden it's saved in your archives, but it also emails you. What's the benefit of Evernote? You can stack all of that together, right? And so Evernote, great location, lots of forces. I think one of them is an albino. You write it down, you take a picture of it. It's like this glowing orb. Might make it a unicorn. So you do that, you email yourself, or you have it in your system. You lock your information in. That's how you archive it. And so, it's a great way to do it. So Evernote's really good. Use your smartphone. Be safe with it. I'll give you this advice. Stop on the side of the road. Don't do it while you're driving. So that's one way to do it. So the cool part about that with Evernote too is you have your phone, camera, take a picture. This is why it's worth it. Barn, dilapidated barn house. Do that. So, all right. And then once again, I really don't look for anything really large in size unless it's far off in the background. The only time where I ever saw something where it was extremely large in size that I wanted to shoot was all out west. You have the Grand Canyon and you see 25 miles away. That was amazing. I'll take a picture of that. When I was over here, I'm not looking for giant buildings that I'm going to put a model in front of because you're going to eclipse the model if you take a picture of the building, stuff like that. So you want to remember, location-wise, that way. And so when you're out there, guys, like Lake Lanier, where we shot Danielle at, that was me driving down Buford Dam Road. And it was really, let's take a left here. Let's see where that goes. And then we were at Lower Ridge Park. That's the name of the park, guys, if anyone wants to know. You go to Lower Ridge Park, you just walk in the water. And that's how you get the shot there. But ultimately, guys, if you look at the location of this picture of Danielle, you can shoot that anywhere, right? It's just pretty much someone in water. So what I want to go ahead and tell you guys is there's no special location. It's just a place where you can get in water. So that's how it works. And then on your end, you want to be comfortable enough where you can potentially be in the water yourself or somewhere safe. And so you want to get in that angle too. So when you're working outside, guys, when you're looking for locations, don't try to find the perfect spot. Just find somewhere where it's accessible and where the lighting looks nice for you. So, all right. Sorry, what was that? Where you won't be arrested. For anyone who hasn't had the privilege of shooting at Lake Lanier, some of the nicest rangers are out there, and they're very, 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 very honest to you and really cool. I had a ranger come up to me, and she was concerned because I was shooting with the model who had a bikini on, and she was like, make sure, there's kids here. you know, and I'm like, you know, I have a child also. And she's like, then you know, don't do anything that you shouldn't be doing. And I was perfectly fine with that because she was like, outside of that, just have fun. You know, just have a good time. And then I brought a chair out, and she thought it was really cool. And she wanted to help me a little bit. But I was like, you know, it was about to be busy time, and unfortunately, it was right before July 4th, and so that's when a lot of people die. So, you know, that's on the lake. And so we were talking about that, and she was saying some of that, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to use you for labor. So enjoy. So she had a great time doing it. But the reason why I bring this up is Lake Lanier's park rangers are the nicest group of open, like photography open people that I ever met. As long as you play by their rules, they're like, yeah, have fun. Do what you need to do. Just don't do anything that you wouldn't.
And Roswell Park police are the worst. Yeah, just to let everybody know, if you're shooting at Roswell Hill, I did a shoot down there with a model. She was wearing a bikini with Daisy Dukes and actually had a tank top on top of it. And we did the shoot, and everything was fine. And another photographer saw the shoot, hired the same model. She wore the same clothes, and she was down there by the waterfalls on the rocks. And all she was doing was, you know, stuff like this. He got thrown out of the park for indecent photography and was banned for life from Roswell.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, so, you know, I mean, I shoot there all the time. I never had a problem. And again, I know most of the people there, but other photographers have had an issue there, especially like on, you know, Saturdays and Sundays, there's a lot of people around. I wouldn't do anything too provocative there.
The ones are pretty cool because the Rangers were like, hey, if you're going to do anything a little bit more risky, go behind those bushes.
Yeah.
And so the Lakeland ones, they're really good people.
One of my friends mentioned Atlantic Station.
Oh,
I did a fashion shoot 2 years ago. I did get harassed, but you go there, I had police on me. I mean, I couldn't even do anything. I even just brought my camera out, and I was harassed.
Atlantic Station is a weird one because it really depends on the day, but I think technically it's private property.
Yeah, it is. Against people. It's public. They'll say it's private. And you know, if you go in that park and start shooting, whip out a nice camera, they're on you like that.
Yeah, I even did houses in Centennial Olympic Park. Believe it or not, Centennial Olympic Park is not public.
You're kidding me.
It varies. Like Centennial Olympic Park, what the issue we had there was when we had equipment out. When it becomes a liability, when it becomes a private liability, where because you know how people are, if you're covered, well, they might go ahead and sue the park too.
Right.
And so when we had equipment out, we had a couple other films out at Olympic Park. They were like, put those up, you guys can keep on shooting, but the lights go on. And something that I've always been, guys, is I may ask for permission not to get this guy. And, you know, I've had a lot of, like, just people are like, yeah, whatever, you seem nice. So, you know, the worst one, not bad, but makes me feel bad, was Gabe's Gardens. Where that's the only one that I regret most because I shot Elizabeth there. And Gibbs Gardens was actually their response was amazing. But the only thing that makes me sad is they don't want us to take pictures there because it distracts from the gardens, which I perfectly agree with. They're like, this is not a place for photo shoots. This is a place where a person can go and look at flowers. And so the owner of it was extremely nice. He was extremely like, I don't need to erase your photos. Just please don't mention Gibbs Gardens. We don't want to explain to other people why they can't shoot. You know, they were extremely nice. But if anyone wants to blame anyone ever for stopping you from shooting people at Gibbs Gardens, I was the one. You know, I was one of them. I'm sorry, guys. But it was a great shoot. So
Yeah, it was a great shoot.
it was a great shoot. But Gibbs Gardens, if you guys want to check it out, just for free. What was that?
I'll tell you what, I shoot there all the time. I know, you know, David Akubian shoots for him, and I've met him and everything else. If you're just taking somebody like a one-on-one, you know, it don't look like a professional shoot. I've shot my daughter there. I've shot Madison Shea there. Just, you know, it's fine. But if it looks like a photo shoot, posing and laying down and stuff like that.
Exactly.
That's what I noticed. I get in trouble soon. I look professional.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying I have people on me. If I don't look professional, it's fine.
You get I love New York shirt and stuff like that. So yeah, guys, there are some places that are really nice, and some places that suck. Just be aware of it. Just know that some places require you to have a permit. I think. Well, what's the fine if you don't have?
You know, that's the thing, Trent. No one knows.
No one knows.
And yeah, you know, Roswell Photographic Society's been all over that. Because what if the photographers need a permit, but not sketch artists and painters? The problem is that if you go there on a Sunday when a lot of people are doing like engagement shoots and senior portraits, people set up entire studios. I mean, some of these guys are blocking bridge. You know, they got 9 lights set up and reflectors and equipment all over the place, and that's what they don't like. But we looked into that. And it's $100 for a permit, and we've asked many times, what is the fine? And nobody really knows.
It's probably $100.
What is it?
No, it's probably like $100 and you get the permit with it.
Yeah.
Here it is. Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is that it just gives them the leverage. You have a, they don't like what you're doing, have a permit, and get out. If you have a permit, you can't have all this equipment.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I suggest getting national park passes. It's like $30 for the year.
yeah.
And you get all of it. But from personal experience, guys, the Lake Lanier Rangers, some of the best, some of the nicest. They'll go out of the way to help you with it, and it's just recognize that they have a really harsh job. It's Lake Lanier. They have to deal with a lot of inebriated people, and also unfortunately, they also have to deal with a lot of drownings. So you just have an open mind. You just don't give them a problem. They're some of the nicest people I know.
Us to get in, but Lake Lanier Island is really nice to shoot on. It's low friendly there. Nobody ever harasses.
So yeah, feel free to talk to each other too about it, because I didn't realize that. Lastly, you guys may have noticed that I've done a shoot with Madison, like downtown Roswell. One of the things is I used to place, it was Roswell Provisions, and the owner was there. And something I'm always big about is we do make money with photography, but I believe in the barter system, and I believe they're giving me something without asking for anything back, so I always offer. No one knows what you do until you tell them. And so I am a photographer, and I will give them photos. This is what I'm doing. If they say, no, you can't use it, you know, I was told no, no biggie. But if they're like, oh, feel free to take photos, I'll offer those photos to them to use also. Do I have any expectations? No, but you're kind of evenly exchanging. And just so you guys, for anyone who, this might not be your MO, but it's mine. If I go to a storefront, I'll buy something from there. Roswell Provisions, where we went, Madison and I got gelatos. It's not much, but $10 for the gelatos, $3 tip. Thank you, may I shoot here? Yes. It's better than just walking in and just shoot. So take care of your local businesses, because you want them there a week from now, 2 weeks from now. And the cool part about that is they know you're a photographer, they have your contact information. They might not call you in 2 weeks, but they may call you in 6 months and say, hey, I remember when you came out here, do you do wedding photography? Well, yes, I do. Well, I have a client whose photographer is sick now. Can you cover this? Of course I can. It's happened to me before, guys. And so just cards ready or so on, and go scout your locations and, you know, talk to people. All right. Which is exactly this one. Many locations are also open to letting you use place if you share your photos. For those who have found a location, here's a really neat app that will show you exactly how the sun and the moon will rise and set at that location. Photoephemeris.com. It's called the Photographer's Azimuth, A-Z-I-M-U-T-H. If you download that app, it will show you the exact moon path and the sun path at a given time. It's meant for architectural photographers, but if you're planning something, I'm going to go shoot at the Grayson Corn Maze. There's a silo here. Look it up on Google Maps. Use this app, and it'll show you Google Map, and it'll show you exactly how the sun will set and raise at that location.
There's also on, you got an Android or SunDroid, Sun Surveyor, great programs. They show you the moon cycles, everything, timings, and
is it in-depth and really detailed? You might not use it all the time. Yes, it is, guys. But it's really neat to think that, okay, wedding coming up September 23rd, 2015. What day or what time is the sun setting? They'll tell you. Where is the sun setting? They'll tell you. And so it's really neat. It's really neat to pre-plan that shit. So it is an app. I think the George Street or is it? Okay. What was the name again?
SunDroid.
SunDroid, guys, and
Sun Surveyor.
Sun Surveyor is the one.
Yeah, if there is a fee, it's like $2.
I think the photographer's azimuth is like $5.99 or something like that. It's not something you guys will use all the time, but it's really neat thing. Mostly, if anyone ever hires you to take pictures of their building, you know exactly where the sun is raising and where the sun's setting in the ideal time to shoot it. So,
I got the app and the instructions I sent. Tutors on how to do that for price.
Potentially, but actually, I always just went to the website. Photographer's Azimuth. I looked that up and it leads to the website, and there's a massive fact detail over there. Have you looked? Azimuth, Azimuth. So, yeah, if you go to if you search Photographer's Azimuth online, it leads to this, and the website's pretty detailed. All right, guys, so that picture of Sophia on the left, when I'm scouting locations, I want to go ahead and reiterate where it looks pretty cool. I've had people ask before, but all in all, pretty much it's an area that's smaller than what Sarah's in to that box. You don't really need much to have a great location, guys. And also, it's just one of those things, so don't get too inundated about like, oh, I have to find this perfect location. I found that while I was walking with the other Sarah, and we were just walking, and I saw something on the left that was a cliff. I walked there, and bam, this was there. And it was a small little ravine that had water in it, and I've been using it for a shoot now. So it's one of those things where it wasn't anything crazy or amazing. It was just casually walking and finding it. And so just be willing to check out the small little side paths to find a location. All right, guys, so any questions concerning locations and scenery? Nope. Good? All right.
What about the north section?
City and industrial? Well, one of the things I don't know if they do it anymore, but something that was really neat before to find that is, did anyone ever do that, it was on Flickr, and it was a really neat group where they took a Rand McNally map. They randomly chose like C9, and that's the quadrant that you got. And then you would explore that area. It was sort of an urban explorer type thing. In this case here, I will go ahead and say it, there is a higher chance that something bad will happen in the city. And so prepare yourself for that. Anyone have any suggestions concerning urban settings in the sense of dilapidated buildings or so on, in the sense of not locations but how you found it? Was it just high risk, high reward type stuff, guys, if you did it? Because that's how it was for me. Like, I went to a building, I was like, oh my God, I look like I'm going to get killed here. All right. And just go in, and then if I survive the first day, then I hopefully survive the next day, bring someone I know like Sarah, and then we can die together.
I carry.
And if we don't die, then I'll bring someone new down the line. But that's the thing. I am a gun proponent. So it's one of those, be safe. Like I believe in concealed carry, so be safe, take care of yourself, guys. And it's one of those things where live to take photos another day type thing. So be safe out there. Concerning urban locations, that's the thing. Actually, one of the neat things is friend a police officer. Police officers. There's a lot of police officers who are photographers, and they're actually really good people. They're just a little bit eccentric because of their sleep schedule or so on. But nothing hurts in the sense of helping a police officer, getting on their good side, and they tell you, oh, you can go here. Don't worry. I'll get on the board and say, hey, my friends are in there. It's a long-term thing, but if it's something you're genuinely interested in, probably police officer. So,
My first photographer's was too, so we got to go to a lot of really cool locations.
Yeah, it's a long-term thing. It's not instantaneous, but once again, you have this mindset of you do want something, but you're willing to give. So you help the police officer out. You guys become friends. Well, he's going to take care of your back. She's going to take care of your back, and they're going to tell you about these locations, which it's safe to go in. You're on your own in the sense of like if you get injured, but you're not going to get killed, and you're not going to get arrested or turned into Soylent Green or anything like that. You're going to be safe. So. And I've had a lot of success that way. There's been a few officers that have been in Atlanta, and they're really cool, and they take care. They want to photograph also. There's a lot of people here too. You'll be surprised, but there's a few of us here who have old buildings and old barns, or they're around there. And if you're willing to help them out and show them a few things, they're willing to help you out. So it's a really cool thing. It's around you. You never know what they have access to. All right, guys. So this is sort of the very end of it. This is taking it to the next level. Taking outdoor. Is there any question on anything we've covered beforehand? This is your time to ask. Nobody? So I either told you guys enough or it's stuff you already know. But
one question regarding metering, we did talk about like what kind of metering do you use?
I use zero metering, and I don't trust my camera anymore. I don't think it's going to give me the shot I want. And so what I do is, I know this sounds really weird, guys. I use a histogram and I use my back LCD, and I look at that and I just guesstimate. I go outside and I say, this is the aperture I want, this is the ISO I want. I'm going to adjust my shutter speed to what I think it's going to be. Take a shot, look at it, okay, good enough. And so I don't use metering anymore. But if I do use metering, it's center weighted if I have an aperture value. I don't use spot because spot is directly in the center. And if you're dealing with a subject who's wearing black or white, it can vary. I just use center weighted. So, and then I go from there. So metering modes, it's useful, but at this point of how I shoot, I don't use metering that much. Patrick, are you praying? I pray. You pray? That's P mode. P metering. Yeah. So, does anyone have a favorite metering mode that they prefer? But spot, actually, art students like spots. Like almost all art students at like SCAD and Gwinnett Tech are like, oh, spot metering is what I want. Your basic metering mode's evaluative. I prefer center motion. Center weighted just takes that into consideration. But most of my metering is just what I think looks right. Once again, this adjustable approach. This seems right. It works. So, all right, guys. Any other questions concerning outdoors? Everybody there? All right, guys. So using flash outdoors, this is taking you to the next level. Using flash outdoors isn't hard once you understand dynamic range limitations. Did dynamic range make sense to you guys? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and revisit this here. This is how flash outdoor works. And I love explaining this to people because once it clicks in, it makes sense. Once again, your camera can only capture so much range, right, guys? And so here's the issue that you have when you're dealing with shooting outside. Jamie, are you back there? Jamie, can you turn the screen on to show this? All right, so what we have here is the sunlight, right, guys? And the tree, beautiful tree. All right, so if you expose for the sky, the sun there, guys, it's about 40 stops higher, 30 stops higher, right, than your foreground. Have you guys ever seen the pictures where your skies are perfectly exposed, it's blue, and you have clouds? What happens to your foreground? It becomes black, because your camera can't capture that. The way it works when you're shooting outside with a flash is you want to compress that range down. If this measures 10, and it measures 50 back there, what's the difference, guys? 40. We're going to throw an arbitrary number out. Your camera can capture 15. Does 40 and 15 work together? There's 25 different, right? 25 difference. So we have 10 up here, we have 50 here. What if I added a light that gave plus 35 to this? So now we became 45. We have 45 here and we have 50 back there. What's the difference, guys? 5. Can your camera capture 5? Yes. That's how it works. That's exactly how it works. That's how simple it is. You have one brightness level in the back, and you have brightness level up front that's way off the number. And so essentially this is what happens. So we have you over here. And oh, that's it. So has anyone ever kind of seen a picture like this, where it's really bright in the background and the foreground's really dark? So imagine that there's clouds back there, and you guys get a perfect exposure of the clouds. So all it is when you do flash is you turn on a light up front. You have the existing light back there, but now you introduce a light that gives you a plus. It equalizes your foreground and your background. And essentially that's all it is. So when you guys are shooting with a flash up front, that's how you get photos like this over here and that one of Sarah on the right. So the initial shot that I took, guys, this is how you start it. It's actually not complicated. It is if you don't have the equipment. But you take your first shot and you get the sky exposed correctly. So you shoot at f11, you shoot at 1/100 or 200ths of a second, and you shoot at ISO 100. If your clouds look great, awesome, but your subject's going to be dark, right? And so now the next step is to bring a light in and just light your subject. And once you do that, you illuminate your subject, and you already have your background being captured. And because of that, you have equal exposure, and you get a shot like that of Sarah on the right. Does that make sense to everyone? Essentially, that's what it is. When you try to complicate it, it's actually fairly simple. If I turned off the studio light, she would be completely dark, and the exposure would be perfectly fine. So it's going to look like this. It's going to look like that. As soon as I turn this light on, it balances the scene out, and it goes. So for any of those people here who want exact numbers, I can't give that to you. I can't tell you because that's creatively what you're going to do. What I can tell you is how it works. Your camera can only capture so much detail. We're emulating it right now. Your camera, you see this, but your camera sees that because that's all it can capture. So you have to go ahead and compress that range instead of it being, go ahead and someone try to take a shot now. Focus on the plant or so on, and what you'll notice, Sarah's pretty much going to be dark or so on. It's going to vary, and so what you want to do is you want to introduce a light that balances the lighting out for your camera. So with your flash, you add that in, and that's how fill flash works. If you just kind of lessen the shadow, but if you really want to go ahead and make if you really want to overpower the sun, or make it look like a studio shot outside, you're going for a lot more powerful flash. All right, so making it more advanced, the bigger your light source, guys, the softer the shadows. Some of you guys know that, some of you don't. And so the problem about overpowering the sun is as soon as you modify a light to make it really big, you really kill the amount of power that it puts out. So if anyone's ever wondering, should I buy an Alien B 1600 or an Alien B 800? If you're going to use a softbox on it, yes. But if you're just going to use a flash, bare bulb, then no. You don't really need a powerful light source. But if you want to do where you have soft light, like this picture on the left of Kim and Madison, what I want you guys to notice on that one, when you're looking at it, is it's slightly harsh shadows, but it's not super harsh. And it's also lighting both subjects, so that's a big light source. And that's a 600-watt flash that's full power on that one. Now, you wouldn't be able to get that light quality with a little spot or with a little flash. So that's where you would buy a more expensive flash.
That was with the softbox?
That was with the 48-inch softbox. Awesome. So, all right, guys. So,
how far away?
I'm trying to remember 9 feet. So guys, I wish it was like more complicated and I could tell you that, but really all it is compressing that dynamic range down. And so if you're shooting, that's why if the sun's directly right here and illuminating the background, there's not much dynamic range difference because it's lighting your subject and it's lighting the background. It's relatively close to each other. But if it's like, let's say, like this, where your subject's in the shade and your background's lit, then you're going to have to add lighting. Well, go ahead and say now, is it easier to light your subject or light the background? Exactly. So that's why a lot of times you will see people light the subject. But I will go ahead and say this. There comes a time where the sun's directly on your subject and you love it and the background's in shade, light the background. It sounds really weird doing it, but if you ever see a photographer do that, they know what they're doing. because they're balancing the scene out. The subject's already well lit up front, and now they're balancing the back. So where that's relevant as a wedding photographer is, have you guys ever seen a photographer with a flash on their camera, and now there's a flash in the background, lighting the background? That's exactly what they're doing. They're balancing the light out. And so that's what you do. That's how you take outdoor shooting to the advanced level. You go ahead and you bring a light out, and you balance the light out. And so for any technical people there, you can't get a spot meter and measure the background, and then measure the foreground and match it up. You'll notice that if you're off, your measurements are going to be way off. But as you get closer together, they're going to be relatively close. And so to further make it more advanced, not much more, but go to screen 2. A fill light, guys, a fill light fills in the shadows, but your sun is still your main light source. When you take it to the advanced level, you say the sun's a supplemental light, and your light's the main light source. That's the mental difference. That's where you say, okay, I'm introducing my own light, that's the main light, and I'm just using the sun as a supplemental light. All right, so that's how it worked. I'll go back to the left. That's how it worked with that one, with the one with Sarah. The sun was right here on her. She'll go ahead and turn this one on. So what happened? Sorry, guys. So what I did is I went to her. I just told her to stand there. One of the first things I told her was look at your shadows. Our shadow, right, guys? I told you this before. So I said, Sarah, look at your shadow. And then I had her do that, which you guys can see there. You guys see that light coming from over here? And then I had this light in. You guys notice how it looks on her, where it is flat light and so on. And then I added that light in and look that way. And so this one's a little bit bright. We'll move it over here. And if I move it in over here, you'll notice a shadow on her left hand. You guys might notice a separation where there's a little bit of a shadow here. That's how quickly it was set up. Here's the sun. Sarah, look at your shadows. And now that's roughly where you guys may notice. Let me go ahead and turn this one off. If I was quickly shooting, I looked at her shadow, and that's where I put the sun. And so if you're ever out there and you're wondering how you can quickly do it, there you go. The answer is it's a sun dial. And so your light's roughly around that same area. If you want flatter light, bring it closer to where your camera is. If you want more shadowy light, bring it to away from. So from you guys looking over there, let's say I'm going to shoot from where about right there. So there you go, guys. So that's kind of how it works. So my MO is to look at the shadow on the subject, and that's where I start placing my light. All right. So that one's a small light source, so it's kind of like putting two suns together, but it works. All right, so let's go to the next one, guys. Taking it to the next level, and this is the last slide. It's a little bit longer than I expected. All right, so other ways to take it to the next level, guys. Shooting outdoors. Experiment with long exposures. This is a really fun one. You guys may not realize that was shot at 3 a.m. in Cancun, the one on the left. That was a 5-second exposure, shooting at ISO 1600 at 1.4, and I had the subject stay still and just hold that up. So essentially that's it. There's no, I think there was, actually, was there a shooting instrument? I don't remember. But experiment with long exposures. It's really fun. So if you have a subject who's laying there, and mostly if there's moving water or if there's a creek, those are really neat outdoor shoots. So it's something that's really fun that you can do. All right, and then you guys will enjoy this one. When you leave here, look to your right, down the hill, and that's exactly where that's shot. When you leave Photoplex, there's that little hill that goes right to Alderman Drive. Right on top of that hill is where Elizabeth was standing. So what I want to point out with that is you don't need, guys, take it to the next level, you don't need it complicated. That was a quick and easy shot on a cloudy day where we shot outside at a distance. Right out here. As soon as you get out the door, you look to your right, that's exactly where she was standing. And so if you shoot like using controlled depth of field control, you don't really need a crazy location to shoot. You can shoot anywhere as long as you use your depth of field. All right, guys. Any questions? That's the last slide. It's an interesting subject. Anything, guys?
I was shooting on the beach, right? And I had the sun to the back of the water behind my subject. And when I shot it, I had a lot of loss of contrast because, like, I guess, kind of the sun glare. How would you take care of that without still trying to keep the sun in the shot?
You had a great point there. It's a mixture of things. The certain lenses handle it more properly than others, depending on the coating that they have. Did you have your lens hood on?
I did.
You did? Okay, it really depends. Like, one of the things, like, I don't know if you guys know, there's a Canon 85 1.2 version 1 and version 2. And one of the things that they did is, like, they tried to correct for that. But when you're shooting directly into a light source, one of the issues is you're shooting directly into a light source. And so what you may want to try doing is you have a lens hood on, but you can try pulling a card out so you don't see it in front of the lens hood, and hopefully that will kind of block one of that. But sometimes it is what it is. So what I do is, let's say the sun is directed right there. I try to position myself so the sun is now obscured by the subject. Because if it's really in your image, it could be a problem. And so the other thing too I try is I hate saying this, but you can crop it later. Instead of having the sun closer to the center of your frame, where more light's coming in, reposition it so the sun's in a corner, and then crop that extra out. The further it's away from your center axis, the more contrast you're going to get in. The closer it is to your center axis, the more you're going to have that issue. So sometimes it's hard, it's just limitations. So, any other questions, guys? All right, so the other thing too is you guys can shoot with Sarah today. I suggested, obviously it's not going to look really outside as much, but she has a great sort of film noir / Hollywood look. Let's see if we can set that up. Some ways you can use this, guys, is so we have, let's say here, we have this shadow being cast in the background, right, guys? And if you introduce your own light, like this is where you can creatively go with it. So look this way. Stand over here. So that light's not and so we have that shadow in the background, guys. We have something cast there. But now, look that way, look towards that. And so that's how we manipulate outside, guys, and have it going. So if you guys are going to take photos, help each other out here. Grab a camera. Someone hold this. Feel free to take a couple of shots. Online, we're done. So let's go ahead and end the broadcast. Guys, thank you. This was a fun one. We have another one. We have a critique coming up next week. And then we have holiday pictures, right, guys? Like getting ready for shooting indoors, holiday things. Ask questions, though, guys. This is where I'll answer any questions that you guys have related to this. So this is your chance. Later, I'm not going to answer. I'll be like, no. No. Is there anything you guys want to know? Anything you guys want me to just recover?
So in this setup, if you want to have a perfect white, especially with the red, the background, what kind of, how do you set that?
Well, unfortunately, the color tone in here isn't as, it's white to our eyes, but I'll go ahead and tell you, Photoplex is this weird, like, pinkish color. And so what you can do is set to the proper white balance. But if you have a gray card, that's going to be the most accurate. Actually, I think that's a gray card right there. And so, can someone grab a gray card? So, if Sarah holds this, and if you guys are shooting on a technical level, you can always balance, take your first shot with the gray card, and then that, that's going to count for anything that's bouncing or so on, and give you a more accurate color. So you can get it precise, but you can also put it to the roughly the color temperature you think it is. And so that's an Expo disc right there, which also is a gray card type device.
I've never shot a gray card before, no, you know, does it have to be in the right light? This is a question, but does it have to be in the right light?
Yeah, it has to be in the light that your subject's going to be in. And
Well, I
so,
was saying, okay, you know, she can shoot, I can shoot that, and it might be darker or lighter or whatever, but like in my room, is it always going to be got the right light?
it's not about, in this case, it's not much the exposure bit, but it's the color of the gray. Because the issue here is if I put this here, there's a little bit of red bouncing off the gray. And so when you measure it, it's going to change it so it's perfectly gray, whatever this is. And so to answer your question, it's not the brightness of it as much as the fact that it's pure gray in your light source. So
I just know, like, in one year, they just go in my room and click the gray card, and then it's boom, automatic.
Yeah, it really is.
So I don't know, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, you just take a picture of Sarah.
Yeah, I
and
did.
you zoom into the gray card, and then when you click the gray or the white balance utility, it's an eyedropper. You click right here, and it makes that pure gray. And whatever, here's how white balance works, guys. Like let's say there's a little bit of red here, right, on your gray card. If you click on it, it's going to say minus 23 red to get pure gray. Now it's going to do minus 23 to everything. Minus 23 red to balance it out. That's how it works. So you're saying that this is pure gray, and then it's going to do the equation for every other pixel to make it the right one. That's how it works. It's really simple.
It's like, it look different gray here than outside. Go to the camera, or to the room.
Well, the thing is, you take a gray card from every time you change locations. Your gray card isn't for, you don't do a gray card shot here and it works outside. Every time your light is different, you change it. Even to the point of, like, let's say you gray card on me, and then I'm out of the picture and now it's just her. You want to do it, you know, you may want to gray card it. Or if you change your back.
Location in one for each situation.
And the mindset there is, it doesn't seem tedious, yes, but the amount of time it saves you if you do it right, ultimately is worth it over anything you
That's great, because I don't know how to do white balance, being and white balance either. That's just great on me, have to be doing white balance in each, like, room.
Yep. Well, ideally you want to, but if you want to keep it like quick and easy, if you don't want to manually white balance, just get a gray card, and your first shot's with the gray card. Like here,
This is a.
Just toss it. And so you don't toss gray card at yourself, but the second shot you can just toss it away. You don't need it until the next shot. So gray card like that, $6, guys. So if you don't have one, you can white balance on a white piece of material, but don't, because if you overexpose something, it's pure white. So you have to have the perfect exposure on a white card to white balance on white. But on gray, you can be slightly off on either direction, and you'll be fine. All right, guys. So in this case, we have this shot that's emulating, balancing there. We have sun in the background, and we have a little tree there. But stand up, guys. There's no reason for you guys to sit. Take some pictures. Talk to us.
One question.
Yeah.